This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KBNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Michael Knowles is on the national radar. What a star. Reasons to Vote for Democrats, comprehensive guide, his book. Of course, The Verdict with Ted Cruz, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, who we had on earlier to endorse U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan here in the great state of Alaska, who's got a tough race. You can check out more from him at michaeljknowles.com, and we'll post that on the YouTube video comment section. Michael, how are you today, the day before the big day tomorrow?
I'm doing well, Tom. It's great to be with you. And I have to tell you, everyone's making all sorts of predictions about what's going to happen tomorrow. I think this is the least predictable election in our lifetimes, and I think we're all on eggshells waiting to see what will happen.
Agreed. You know, we could get right into it. And I have, full disclosure to you, and you may have known this, but I have a PR and ad agency with some satellite offices out of state, and the fans that listen to the show know that, but you may not. And so we're always in the middle, and we help Republicans of these races. And so I have some inside baseball data like you do. And from what I'm hearing, Pennsylvania, Trump may have shored that up recently. Florida, he seems to be ahead. You look at the news, it's kind of like with the New York Post and your episode 57 and the oligarchs of the tech world. There's so much subterfuge and BS going on. I don't know if the public knows, or even you and I know what's truth and what's not, unless you have kind of an insider monitoring it. And what do you feel about that? Is it a scary time to think there's so much false news and narratives nationally?
We seem to have reached peak disinformation. There's no question about that. And yes, some of the insider polls that I've been privy to do seem to give a fair bit of hope to Republicans. But I think what this election is going to come down to is turnout. This is not a persuasion election. There are not a lot of undecideds. There's probably not a in the entire country. This is going to come down to who can turn their people out. And so if there is a lot of enthusiasm, we'll do well. Just anecdotally, I went to vote the other day at my polling place, and I saw there was a long line of people waiting to vote early. And I had my Make America Great Again hat on. I was waiting to be shot and tarred and feathered. And someone did yell at me, but they weren't yelling angrily. It was a Trump voter that was in line just yelling out support. Person next to him started yelling too. He was also a Trump voter. This was in one of the most liberal precincts in Los Angeles, one of the most liberal cities in the country. So just anecdotally, what we see with our own eyes is there's a lot of enthusiasm out there for President Trump. You can see it in the crowd sizes and in other metrics as well. Now, we know that the so-called data science experts tell us that Biden is way ahead. They told us the same thing in 2016. So what we're forced to debate is, do we believe the experts or do we believe our own eyes? And we don't know. We don't know what will happen. Obviously, there are some questions of fraud that could be taking place in some precincts tomorrow, especially in Pennsylvania. So, it's anybody's ball game, but I think we're really looking at two totally different scenes.
Yeah, it's so true. We're talking with Michael Knowles. You mentioned L.A. I've been there many times, have many friends there, and Navy veteran, African-American, young man, smart man, Joe Collins is running against Maxine Waters, who's awful. Are you in that district? And whether or not you are, does he have a shot?
I'm not in Maxine Waters' district, though neither is Maxine Waters. So
That's true.
That's something we have in common. Joe seems to be a pretty top candidate. I don't know him personally, and I haven't followed the race extremely closely, but from what I know about it, there have been many times over the years that people have tried to stage a challenge to Maxine Waters, and it's always been implausible, wasn't going to go anywhere. He seems to be the real deal. He seems like a serious candidate from the area, knows what he's talking about, knows what's going on the ground. So I have more hope than I have had in past races against her that there would be a way to unseat her. And obviously, these local elections, if there's any chance of unseating Maxine Waters, it's going to have to do with the coattails on the national level. Don't forget, there are more Republicans in L.A. County, I think, than just about any county in the country. The problem is there happen to be more Democrats here as well. So again, there's this issue of enthusiasm and who's got the enthusiasm to turn out the vote.
Boy, it's so true. We look at the U.S. Senate races that your good friend and co-host on The Verdict talked about, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, this morning on the show. And whether it's Gardner against Hickenlooper in Colorado, here in Alaska, Dr. Al Gross, 35 million plus being brought in against our U.S. Senator, our beloved U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan, or you look at Lindsey Graham, who is just such a good, thoughtful, faith-based fellow, and he's getting a challenge. He said earlier today that it was the highest in terms of his opponent, highest raised in any U.S. Senate race in history. How do you think some of these races play out? I think Sullivan in Alaska wins, and he's up. I want people to vote, but I think he's going to win. What about some of the other ones?
Well, I hope Sullivan does win, and it is going to require that people go out there and vote, make sure that their votes are counted as well. Senator Graham has the distinction not only of being a great thinker, but also he is the most entertaining guest we've had on the Verdicts podcast with Senator Cruz. And, he just has great insight. He's particularly fiery during the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings and during the impeachment. So he's been a strong conservative. I know that there have been some questions over his support of amnesty and other issues. But when we're looking at the issues that we face right now, he's been a very strong voice for conservatives and for the administration. So, the polls tell us one thing, the enthusiasm tells us another. And then there's this third issue, which people haven't talked about quite as much, which is money. The Democrats have done a great job raising money. I suspect a lot of that is due to the Black Lives Matter organization. Many of those donations were funded to blatant Democrat Party front groups, and I think that has contributed to some of the money bomb that we've seen on the Democratic side this time. But again, money can't always buy elections. It can have a lot of influence, but if the candidate doesn't have the goods, then no amount of money is going to push them over the finish line. And so I think the role of money in politics is also going to be on the ballot in this election as well. Will the people and their enthusiasm overcome an elite orchestrated money fundraising campaign?
It's true. We're talking with Chief of Staff Michael Knowles of President Ted Cruz's administration. Wait a minute, that's in 4 years. No, so what about Kamala Harris? But before we kick you off, because I know you're swamped, and it was very kind of you to call in and meet and greet the folks here again. Kamala Harris seems awful to me. I'm glad to see some ethnic diversity. I love that. Female, age, someone from California. That's cool. Love California. But I don't really like her, and a lot of people don't. And the thought that she could be president, I mean, our first female president or vice president, I wish it was not her. I assume I'm not alone in your circles, and collegially and friendship-wise and family-wise, do they feel the same, especially since you're in California?
Tom, forget about you not liking her. People in California don't like her either. She couldn't even win her own state in the presidential primary. She was one of the first out for a reason. She's deeply unlikable, and she's deeply unprincipled, which, frankly, these days it could be a mark in her favor because the Democratic Party ideologically has moved so radically to the left that really they would undermine the whole American project. The problem is this. Because she's an empty soup politician who licks her index finger, puts it in the wind, and sees which way it's blowing, she seems to have sided with the radicals. She recently put out a campaign ad through the Biden-Harris campaign saying that she supports equality of outcome, basically radical redistribution, and a socialist agenda, which many in her party are supporting. So it's a disaster, and the fact that Joe Biden can barely string a sentence together should make one seriously worry that we would have someone unprincipled and prone toward radicalism as Kamala Harris, who could, God forbid, who could become president.
Yes. You couldn't have said it better, my friends. His name is Michael Knowles. You can check him out at michaeljknowles.com. For the verdict with Ted Cruz, before we let you go, anything big on the agenda for those? I assume it's going to be post-election dialogue and an episode forthcoming to that end to kind of regroup and look at what happened?
Absolutely. The senator has given us a little bit of inside baseball as well as his general political insight. So we will certainly decompress after the election. And we've got some fun events planned in the future as well to hopefully bring the verdict show back to a live audience, hopefully at some point in the near future.
Well, it's huge. And I said you're a rising star. You've already risen, my friend. You're at the pinnacle. You have so many fans in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest where we broadcast. And keep up the good work. God bless you. And we look forward to, in the future, hopefully with good news in the coming months, have you back on again to talk about President Trump's second term.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much, Tom, and I look forward to discussing that second term, hopefully in the near future.
Absolutely. The Michael Knowles Show, you can check it out online. Michael Knowles, what a star. What a star. Glad to have him with us. It's the Tom Anderson Show.